Okay, so it's running. For the first time since beginning, starting to record what I'm doing, I did some time off camera. Can't remember, off camera, off video, can't remember exactly what it was I was saying when I left off last time, but the gist was it was not working and didn't seem to be consistent. Was not running when our render was part of a process, but was running when it was an executable, or just run as an executable. I did some things to restructure our render a bit, such that it doesn't instantiate the app, doesn't run the app, doesn't ever terminate the app. The structure is just a bit different, so that it still gives the render finish message if abandon became true, and abandon only becomes true in these certain circumstances. I don't think I have to. That's very annoying. I don't think I have to return here. In fact, I don't want to. What does it mean, actually, come to think of it, to return? Well, anyway. This has worked so far. Anyway, this was one of the changes I made to render. That did not itself seem to solve the problem. In fact, I, in the end, inserted a piece of code in several places, remarked out different places at different times. This is still not all tested. In fact, none of the OpenGL renders are tested. But what I did, look at the state of output anim. It really needs a lot of stuff removed from it. But what I did inside render was insert pieces of code like this, which open a file, write a line to it and close it. It was the only real way I could think to get debug info out of the process. By always writing the position, I was able to see whether or not because I only got one line of output as well. So really what I saw was whether or not the rendering process had reached this frame by that point. I knew what the value of the final frame to appear was, so I could know what the value of the frame being rendered was. So anyway, by this process and inserting it in several places, here's another, I was able to pin it down to inside render gradient, as a matter of fact. Not a big surprise, but the thing that actually stopped it happening, do you know? One thing I did was I inserted this here, but at the same time I think I remmed out all these things. I saw that all these debugs were still here, and I just thought, I'm just going to take them out. The debug rights are more or less useless at this point. And I'll bet that was the change. Whatever it was I was doing in the debug rights, calling microsecs, could be just doing the debug rights, doing several debug rights, don't know. Well, one way or another, I guess it was taking out the debug rights. It ended up seeming very much like it was adding in this that made it continue to render. But no, I'll bet it was the debug rights. By the time it reached a certain point, it would have done so many debug rights. I don't know why that would be a problem, but maybe that was the problem. Anyway, as of this moment, I have both compiled to release. Main is going to compile, and I have in fact already rendered. I'm not going to play it for long because, oops, not completed. This is not terribly exciting, and I didn't do very many test still renders, so it all bleaches out. But the gist is, this was a 500 frame render. Every frame worked, and FFmpeg saw itself through to the end. I'm tempted just to overwrite it with anything because it's not great. But actually, I will just rename it. First integrated. Just for the sake of it. And it can go into video, and so can that. Cursor image, that's almost certainly rubbish. Now, for the sake of it, I will start a video rendering. I don't know. Maybe I'll bump up the recursions 1 point. What will this look like? Is it? Yeah, a real mess. Where is... I soon am going to talk about the changes that I need to make to this all in general. Okay, well that looks fine. I'm going to bump this up to 9. And I know that this was, far too bleached out. And okay, I'll speak. I'm going to start this rendering, and I will make this more like 100. Okay, apply. I will do a test render where it seems to have a load of overlaps. Like, it's not only overlaps I'm concerned about, it's well, let's just do one here. Go for it. This render single image worked. Now, that looks pretty good to me. I feel like it could be brighter at the lower end, but I don't want to saturate it too much, so I'm going to do this and just kind of brighten things up. And actually I'm going to raise this a bit because I think it did look pretty saturated. And I'll just render again, overwrite. Rendering single image, this is working, I'm very delighted to say so far. Yeah, it's still really dark. What could I do? Well, I mean, I kind of did two things at once there. Fine, I'm getting confused. Go for it, yes. Okay, well, it's kind of very difficult to have much of an effect, but I can see what is... I guess some of this is just really low, and that I would have to up the things. Let me see what it looks like in a very different arrangement. So, like, this is about as different, or it's fairly different. Okay. Still need to fix... basically, all the time that I've spent looking at this code has just been trying to make these things work together. So none of these little things like fixed. That's one of the first things I'm going to fix when I've... Now that took a lot longer. That's more of a sign of how long this is going to take generally, probably. And wow, it's totally bleached. Okay, so well that's interesting because it means I can do something idiotic. It means I can probably bump this up. I think it's still going to be totally bleached. It would be nicer to get more information, at least from the single image rendering. I don't know if I'm going to be. I doubt it's going to be possible for me to get more information about the FFmpeg section of this of our render. Huh. Well, actually, yeah, I overshot it. Just out of curiosity, if we go back to one of the tight arrangements, and get another quick render. Shorter lines make a big difference. Yeah, okay, so I am gonna go 300. And I'm gonna go back to this and endure a little wait. Let me think. Okay. Right, that looks fine to me, and I think I'm just going to go for it. I'm not going to bother. The other end changed less, but let me just I'll quickly have a look at it. Yeah, it looks fine. And I'm going to go for 500 frames, and I'll go for 5 video loops. Or I could just go for the 1000. I mean, this is still part of a test. Because of the uncertain way that I witnessed it begin to work, rather than fixed it, maybe this will just crash it, I don't know. But this is fine. 5 loops of 1000 frames. Can get away with less than that, actually. I'll go for 3. 9 recursions. Go for it. Recursor anim, that'll do. Rendering animation. Anim frame 0, 1, and so it goes on. Now, for this portion of it, it's fairly slightly interesting. This, no, I can't tell because my application's disappeared. Well, that's great. That'll be because I have several times opened and closed. I say because as if that's the reason. It shouldn't disappear because of that, but what has happened is, in the past, the act of a subordinate process entering or exiting from a recursor, or main I think as it's called here, has caused it to pop out of this list for some reason. I mean, it's here, it's working, and I can tell it's working. The thing I was going to say is what you can see in this list when it happens. I'm going to have slower renders because of this, I forgot. When it's appearing correctly is that this, whilst running like this, is maybe 20% of the processor. The R renders maybe 30%. This can be dropped to virtually 0 by minimizing it, but it makes no difference to rrender. Rrender is my still fairly simple piece of code. It's not using loads of threads or anything, so it takes a chunk of the processor and it sticks to it. It's pretty much 29%, 30%, same as this. This stays about the same. You can take a bit more sometime. Well, no, not more. It'll hit 30 and sometimes it'll be less if it's not doing much. At this point it will be doing at least 30 because I can tell it's dropping frames right now. For the time being, this information is kind of good enough. I will boost the size of this again. It still looks too small. While that's rendering, I want to talk and think about, first off, how distressing it was making all these processes work. That I think it should have been easier, but I'm not sure why it wasn't. And maybe when it came down to it, it kind of wasn't that difficult. It was just that I didn't know what I was doing, and And actually, I still don't know what I'm doing, and if I did know just a couple of other little details, maybe the whole thing works totally fine, and I could have had a much easier time of it. But as it was, I was just in a lot of doubt, and I still am slightly. I think I hit problems at one point terminating a process which seemed terminated. I'm not sure. This is just another of the uncertainties. The recursor itself was terminating when the render was terminating. Obviously that's not right. And I could see the bit of code I'd added. It's not really worth going into, but one of the things I did was call terminate on render process in recursor, and it crashed recursor. Or it closed it. I mean, it didn't seem to crash, it closed it. But anyway, the things I need to do. The first thing I need to do is fix that little animation. Once the message is like the message about ffmpeg rendering to file such and such, this is the only thing that changes. And all it's really doing is showing that the renderer hasn't closed. Like, I'm getting so little information from ffmpeg that all the renderer can feed back to recursor is, yeah, it's still going. That's all I'm aware of. std error doesn't work in the process class, even if the process class did seem to work the way it seems to work, but I couldn't get it to work that way. I couldn't read std out even from my own process, so I'm possibly just using it wrong. I need to fix this. Well, the thing actually I was going to get to is that if this is working, if this turns out to be reliable, and there's a lot about it I still need to test. I'm only doing gradient renders, so it's not using OpenGL at all inside our render. There's a bunch of draw modes which involve OpenGL, which I do want to, allow. And there may be other draw modes that definitely involve OpenGL. In fact, I can imagine at least one. So that needs tested. This needs fixed. That needs tested. Some other options need to be available relating to what is produced in the animation. And I don't know, it's a bit hard for me to imagine what the distinction between some of these options and what these other options I'm imagining are. The other options will be things like delete images. There's no reason to delete the images if you don't want to, but on the other hand there's no reason to hold on to them if all you want is the video. So an option to just decide whether or not you want to clean up the images afterwards. An option to, well, the choice between lossless and standard MP4. I'd have to look up what the lossless one is. This is MKV or something? I've forgotten. MKV, yeah. I don't know if this is lossless. Maybe this would be better than MP4. But I want to have the option between either lossless or standard. I don't know if I'm going to go into loads of options. And I am going to enforce extensions. Whatever extension you give your thing, it's going to enforce it, and that will be the file you will overwrite, and that's what it'll check. That's not what it does just now, but that's a thing that needs to change. Which brings me on to another small thing that needs to change, which is when you click static or animation and there's already something running, it has to ask you first about whether or not you want to stop the current render, not wait till after you've bloody selected a file name. That's another small thing, which brings me on to implementing that means changing the positions of those lambdas, I think, or some lambdas. And the lambdas seem to work perfectly. So I think I should restructure some of the recursor GUI code to sort of move the weight into the GUI response method or function. Put lambdas just into the big bit of response code so that it's all just in there, and what's inside the recursor code is just much more the bits that actually act on the project, not things that check whether or not you want to override a file and stuff. So there's that. I should write some of these down. I'm sitting looking at the pretty picture. But I can come back to main. Okay. Apparently, can I spell apparently? Apparently done testing. Doing into separate process. Divide recursor into subclasses. Also apparently done testing. Make rendering. Lock app. No, didn't do any of those. Return to editing. Yeah. Yep. This was done. Array entry division. Non-linear entry. Yeah, okay. Got to think about that. Guide appearance. Eskin GUI. Yeah, these guide appearance is important, but also before rendering options. Test all draw modes. Implement lambdas within GUI. So actually I'll maybe do an X and an X. X. Oops. Array entry, okay. So not little things, I'm just going to write them out. It is fix render anim. It is video options, keep images, quality. There was something else I was thinking. It's better not to save the log. I mean, I'm tempted to just always save the log, but I suppose there's two options. One is I just always save the log, and I just save the last log inside the, you know, the app directory folder. Or I save a log alongside any image or animation. But one way or another, it's log options. That's what I can think of just now. What was also, hang on, let me just have a little look. Still ticking away. I mean, I'm anxious about how janky it feels like I've written it, but actually maybe it's okay. Maybe this is a fine set of things I'm doing. I like this in a way. I'm kind of happy with this amount of reminder that you are doing a render just now. Also have to build in confirm close close when rendering. Reorder. Confirm. Abandon current render. Oh no, God. Every time it takes a little bit longer, my heart skips a beat, but it shouldn't. I am well aware that there'll come a period in the animation when they just take a long, long time to render as it's passing through a point that makes the lines cross right across the screen. Those lines just take a lot longer to draw. I have to take care not to close it accidentally because this is not in yet, this confirm close when rendering. What else? Those little things I was talking about. Dashing variant. This is very important. Like building in this. Come on, there you go. Building this into the renderer was basically essential. You know, the code was a fun thing I could use without it built in properly. And it made a big difference to me even when it was built in poorly. But if I continue to use this and it continues to be reliable, then that's a great thing. It makes the difference between the app being, you know, a toy just for me and a toy that I can put up, and if people want to play with it, they can. Because it shouldn't, in theory, crash. But having said that, I have made apps which I've been confident won't crash. This will be an app I don't think I'll ever be confident it won't crash. Anyway. Reorder, confirm, abandon current render. I've given myself time to think about these things while this happens. I don't have all that much longer on this video, mind you. If I can get this list of stuff, then honestly that is a list. It's a list of stuff. It's not nothing. I'm so anxious about this, you can tell I'm popping it up constantly. Task manager still giving me no useful info. Okay. Reskinning the GUI is kind of getting more important in my mind. I like the old-fashioned thing that looks like an Amiga workbench, but I guess not. Really, it'd be nice just to have white square buttons, I think. How exactly I make them stand out? I mean, obviously you could just put little lines around white square buttons. And I will do that if I need to. It just seems very wasteful, one way or the other. Either I'm drawing a lot of pixels, you know, I can just draw two rectangles, one on top of the other. And that means every gadget means two entire rectangles worth of pixels. One rectangle, you know, one pixel inside the other to create an outline. Or I render 1, 2, 3, 5 rectangles, which actually means 10 triangles to draw the outlines separately. And, you know, that would be the same as what I'm drawing just now. 10 triangles per gadget, plus all the other triangles required for lettering and any other details. But if I'm drawing simpler gadgets, I want to get some benefit in a way, sort of. Recoding the details of how the GUI draws itself is definitely not out of the question. At the moment it's drawing everything that is enjoyably easy to do, and it's still pretty fast, but obviously it doesn't need to draw everything every frame. But I am considering just not doing the big upgrade until I've totally decided whether or not I'm going to move to C++. It's fairly shaken me not, understanding that there's nothing I can do very much about if there's missing parts of the language, it's just the way it is, And also that it's almost inevitable that the parts will break down. There is a fork called Wonky, which I will check out, and I believe it's all, it's completely compatible. I did look a little into it and noticed that parts of the process class which I need are not replaced, they're not built into Wonky, they are still missing, so. But it might have more, it might have a minimal or a certain amount of support going into the future as operating system change and things. But then, of course, I think if I learn C++, and it would be a great thing, not even the learning of C++, if I learn all of the little bits and pieces of extra stuff I have to code in order to make something like this in C++, then I'm coding C++ on Windows. I know I'll have to learn Win32 stuff, and it's just not going to be the same as programming with Monkey, where I'm coding this, but recompiling it to be on, I believe actually Linux through Wonky would be very easy, and Mac OS, and Android. Maybe this wouldn't be very good on Android or iOS, but it could be done. But writing code for those things is easy with Monkey. So pouring the energy into C++ does have obviously huge benefits, but also the code I'll be making will be more limited, it'll seem like. Or be a lot more work to get on all those great platforms. Anyway, keep working. Don't you stop. If that stops just now, I will be so upset. This is a list of things to be going on with anyway. I suppose there's also improve gradient set edit box. That has to be got round to. Oh yeah, fix. Wonder if I'll take this and I'll put it here. I'll take this and I'll put it there. And now I've got it in two vague groups, which is renderer and a cursor. So also in the renderer it is allow or create a render log. And that should include the time for draw. Well, time for the array, and also maybe the time for the pixmap creation. It should get the overall time for images. Time overall, highest point, average height. Let me just check up on this little bad boy. Yeah, it's going slow. Just all those long lines, but you better still get. I'm noticing this is still clicking around. God damn, that's slow. That's going to give me a heart attack. Oh. Average height. Yeah. Anims. Longest frame. Average frame. Highest. Again, like highest overall point. Average overall height. There was something else for anims, I thought, but well, yeah, the FFmpeg time. There are other things I could say, like don't know. There are other like little details I could go into, like should I have the number of lines rendered? Maybe. Don't know if that's really worth knowing. You can always figure it out. Just, you know, lines to the power recursions times frames. You better click over, you little bugger. Yeah. But with a reskin GUI and some standout bloody guides. Yeah, I need the key to hide the guides as well. I already decided that, I think. I really... Yep, hide hotkey option. Really need to... Yeah, log options is there. I really need to build in that cancel or the close protection, because I'm just, it's right there, you know, and I could stop the render with a single click. That's no good. And maybe I'll come up with a better animation than that. I see the spacing of the little line isn't... If it was equally spaced either side, I think I might be happy with it, but as it is, there's others I could do with a single, I could do swirling slashes, you know, minus, backslash, pipe, forward slash, minus, but dunno. I kinda like that. If it was more even, I'd like it more. I could make it look different. I should have a think about it. I don't want to touch the code at the moment because I know what my habit is, to faff around with the code and then just click run. And if I do that, you know, the executable starts again. And I lose, well, I don't lose the animations, but that's not a lot of use. You know, at the moment you can only render the whole animation basically, so. Suppose that's all options that could go in. I'm not that fussed about that, but it is, you know, better animation options is certainly always something. At the moment, paths can go, you know, you can have them looping or not, but they're smooth and they line, and it's, you know, there's the chord and as much time between each, an equal amount of time between each point over the path. That's obviously not exactly sophisticated. It could have an extra bit of animation which sort of determined how quickly it moved the route, whether or not it came to a halt at certain points. It's just more information, which would be useful, I'm sure, for some animations, and maybe in the future I'll decide that it is worthwhile to put in. It's not a priority just now. This is going to take a long time to render all those, so I don't think I'm just going to keep the video going with me talking rubbish when it's been 40 minutes already. Frame dropped. So this does appear to be working. I'll keep my breath held with each passing little tick. Come on, one more. Do it. Thank you. And I've got a list of things. And I will save that, but I won't run it. I'll leave that running, and I'll call it a day just now, and you can see